What storylines are you telling yourself, and which ones are holding you back? Hi, my name is Sam. I'm the host of the show Super Awesome You, Brave Enough Today. You can find more of this show's content at Super Awesome You on Instagram and at Super Awesome You underscore podcast on TikTok. If you haven't done so already, I also would appreciate a 5-star review on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to this show. If they've got a rating, it really helps to encourage others to hit play and to find the show, and we can just grow this super awesome community all together. I've been thinking a lot about storylines and this question that I posed to you at the top of this episode of, what stories are you telling yourself, and really what power do they have over you, and do you need to let them go? And I've been thinking about it specifically in the context of growing this podcast and growing my Substack and building up this community of people and really trying to help them. And I love teaching this stuff. I love talking about this stuff. I love hearing from people that are consuming it and feeling like I'm helping them in some way. It's really, really powerful for me to hear a message from someone that says that they're now motivated to do something because of the words that I said, and it's so empowering and it's so fun. But I've been coming up against a wall that I can feel, and this wall is telling me that I am not going to be as successful as I want, that I can't do this one day as my full-time job, that I, can't walk away from my career of product management, and all of these like limiting beliefs basically. And as a result, especially because I talk about this stuff all the time, I've been asking myself, why am I telling myself this story? Why do I feel like I'm going to hit a wall? Why do I feel like I can't commit to doing this full time and possibly looking into doing this as my job? Because right now, of course, it's a hobby. It's something that I'm doing on the side, something that I'm enjoying doing, a couple hours here each week, publishing these episodes and talking to all of you. I think for me, when I explored this question, it goes all the way back to when I graduated college and launched my first startup. I ultimately had to close that first startup. It was in electronic medical records. And frankly, it was because I was young and naive and I had no idea what I was doing. And most startups fail, right? This is like trying to teach a kid how to walk, or a kid teaching themselves how to walk. They're not going to get it on the first try. They're going to stand up, wobble a little bit, fall down. Maybe they go a step and then they fall down, and they just keep doing it. This is an analogy that's been used a whole lot over the years of kids are not afraid of failure. Failure is just part of the process. They haven't yet been taught that failure is some awful thing that you need to avoid at all costs. And hopefully they never get taught that. But unfortunately, society kind of drills in this idea that we should be perfect from the get go, and that we should always succeed, and that failure is something to avoid or something to fear. But they don't have any of that in their minds yet, right? They are controlled by their instincts, and their instincts tell them, like, it would be great to walk. I see all these adults walking, and I feel like I can do that too. And so they stand up and they try, and they fail, quote unquote, by falling down, and they try again and they try again. And eventually they're walking and moving. My first startup technically was a failure in some regard, but in other ways, it was just me stumbling and falling down. Then I launched another startup, and that got further along. And eventually I launched one that even got accepted into an accelerator fund. I was making money. It wasn't profitable, but I was making money. I was selling something. People were buying it. It was really exciting. And every single time, though, I developed that fear of failure, and that fear of failure became limiting. I told myself over and over that, oh, I just can't find a way to reach that finish line. And for me, the finish line was defined as financial independence. Like, I could do this as my full time job, and I didn't have to work some other job while I was doing this. Like, it went from being the side project to being my full time gig that could support me financially and support my goals. And as the years went by and these side projects remained side projects, I realized that I kept telling myself that. It's like, oh, I just can't find a way to finish these. And I haven't yet done it. And I don't think I'm going to be able to do this ever. And oh, I really want to work for myself full time, but I just can't seem to figure it out. And I would repeat that narrative to myself over and over again. And as I've been working on this podcast, I hear that narrative popping up. But this time, I'm paying attention to it and I'm catching myself saying that. And it's really remarkable because I realize that I am standing in my own way, and that we program ourselves and we program our subconscious so powerfully. And we're most of the time not aware of that. There's a song that I love, and I'm going to bring it up here, and I'm going to try to get back into the habit of attaching a song to each of these podcast episodes. But this is The Search by NF. I featured NF's music on this podcast in season one. I think he's an amazing rapper. The song is so good. And he has this line here, and he says, "Just think about it for a second. If you look at your face every day when you get up and think you'll never be great, you'll never be great. Not because you're not, but the hate will always find a way to cut you up and murder your faith." That line is so freaking powerful because he's truly singing to this idea that we hold self limiting beliefs. If I wake up every single day and I tell myself that I can't reach the finish line with this business, that I will never be able to go full time with a hobby, then yeah, that's probably what's going to happen because our brains like to be right. And we like to be, we seek out information that reinforces our worldview. It's a bias basically. So if we tell ourselves that we're never going to be successful, we look to find patterns in our environment that reinforce that idea. And we basically limit ourselves in the process of doing that because rather than looking for opportunities that reinforce a storyline that says we are successful, we start looking for opportunities to find things that reinforce the storyline that say that we're going to be not successful, if that makes sense. In other words, we subconsciously make choices that hinder our ability to reach the finish line. I'm going to use literally an analogy of running a race. It's like knowing where the finish line is and choosing to not run the course to reach it. Like you just run in circles or you backtrack or you take the wrong turn and you just keep pushing yourself further and further away from it because you want to be right about this version of you that just can never cross a finish line. And it wasn't until I actually ran a marathon and crossed both the metaphorical and literal finish line that I began to challenge that very notion of me not being able to finish something. I had so many conversations with my parents, with my wife, with my friends of saying why I'm so committed to running this marathon, even when I was knocked out for 4 weeks because of an injury during peak training, when I'm supposed to be logging 18 to 20-mile runs every weekend. I knew that I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to postpone, that I was going to run and finish that thing however I could because I told them I'm so tired of the narrative of me saying I'm going to do something and then finding a reason not to do it. And more importantly, finding a reason not to finish it. And so I kept showing up and I had 3 weeks left after my injury cleared before the race. And I basically squished in, you know, all of those 4 weeks of training over the course of a week with the help of my trainer. We figured out the timing. And I got to a point where, I could show up and feel at least somewhat confident that I was going to be able to finish the marathon, whatever that looked like. And of course, as you know, if you've been listening to the show, I actually did cross the finish line. And that really did just light a spark in me. It turned something on in me that challenged that narrative that says, like, I can never finish something. And I also have been specifically thinking about it in the context of this dream that I've had so many years. And it's basically a nightmare. It's like an anxious nightmare because in the dream, and it's the same one I have all the time, I'm running towards something and I begin with actually running. But then the closer I get to the destination, and it's usually some kind of a building that's across the street, and the closer I get to that street, I find that I'm slowing down, and then I find that I fall down to the ground and I'm crawling, and then eventually I'm stopped and my body is literally frozen in this dream. I'm looking at where I want to go and I just can't reach it. And it really is. It's a nightmare because it's this awful feeling of not being able to move. And then more importantly, not being able to move when you are so close to reaching where in my dream I'm meant to go. And what is fascinating to me is ever since I ran the marathon and ever since I've been working on this podcast more and writing my Substack and reading all of this reinforcing material about challenging our storylines, the dream has literally changed. And I get goosebumps talking about it. But recently I've had that dream where now I'm running the entire time. Now I'm speeding up as I get closer to where I want to go. And in many cases, I'm reaching it. And there's nothing special about what happens when I reach it, right? There's nothing magical about this destination. It's usually a nondescript building. But what's happening now is that I find that I'm able to run the entire way there and reach it. And I really think that it's because I'm unlocking this part of my brain and this subconscious part that I had spent a decade training that says I never complete things. And I'm rewriting that to I absolutely complete things and I can do them and I can do hard things and I don't need to hang on to the storyline that I've been listening to for these last 10 years of saying, "Oh, I can never find that finish line." So I want you to think about the storylines you tell yourself. They can be limiting in this case, of telling yourself, for example, you can't do something. I want you to really challenge that and ask yourself, why do you tell yourself that? And what would happen if you told yourself that you could do something? And storylines also can be very empowering. They can, similar to how I've been feeling after I ran the marathon, I've been telling myself I can do hard things. And that's become a new storyline for me. So they can also empower you and help you grow. The point of all of this is that what you tell yourself really, really matters. Your brain is listening and it is storing that into its deep subconscious, and it will start to find patterns and look for opportunities to reinforce the storyline that you are telling it. So if you're telling it that you're not strong enough, that you're not fast enough, that you're not smart enough, it will start to find ways to reinforce that storyline and you'll be stuck in that loop for the rest of your life. If you start to challenge it by saying, I am strong enough, I am smart enough, I am capable enough, and that I can do hard things, it will again start to push you and find opportunities to reinforce that storyline. And that will become a self fulfilling prophecy of success and finding that comfort in the discomfort as you grow, because it will be uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable, it requires sacrifice of some kind. So, I love this, and I'm excited that I've been able to start to unlock this part of my brain, and I've been starting to rewrite this narrative, and then it's even reflected in my dreams, which are an expression of our subconscious often. Dreams are really interesting because they can tap into the parts of our brain that we normally don't have access to, and that's why they're so abstract and so strange, because they don't need to follow the rules of rational thought and logic. So I want you, as your homework, number one, to listen to that song because it's a great song. If you like rap, you're going to love it, obviously. But I think even if you don't like rap and you really listen to the words, he's got some really powerful messaging in this. So that's homework item number one. Number two, think about your own storylines. What do you tell yourself every day? What do people tell you about yourself every day? And which ones empower you and which ones shrink you? And I want you to try to reverse the ones that shrink you and really start to chip away at those. It will take time. It's not an easy thing to do, but over time, again, your brain's going to start to recalibrate and look for patterns that reinforce a new storyline, one that empowers you rather than one that shrinks you. So those are your two homework items. Your third one, like I mentioned at the top of the show, is to leave a 5-star review if you haven't already. I greatly appreciate it. That's a bonus one. You get bonus points on your test if you do that. And with that, though, I'm going to leave you for this week. I hope you have a super awesome week as always. Stay safe, stay grounded, and take that first step.